presentation today called A Day in the Life of a Coach. And most of you have been instructional coaches at one time or another, or currently, so hopefully you can really add to the content of this webinar when it is time to share, because I believe this will be recorded and posted on the community of practice for others to see. Well, I'm trying to advance my slides. Okay, so here we go. A little bit about Educate Texas. So Adelaida and I both represent an organization called Educate Texas. And Educate Texas was founded in 2003. The original call to action was to create a network of early college, high school, and STEM academies. However, as Educate Texas is built upon the model of using public-private partnerships to accelerate student success, we've expanded beyond college readiness into 4 key focus areas: college-ready standards and practices, post-secondary access and success, human capital, and collective impact. The project that Adelaida and I are working on is the Early College Expansion Partnership, which the main goal of is to scale up the early college high school, which is right aligned with Educate Texas's mission of scaling best practices. One of the best practices that we believe is very influential in strengthening teacher pedagogy and leading to student success is instructional coaching, which is a huge part of this Early College Expansion Partnership. Most of you probably saw the essential questions that were associated with this webinar today. So as we go through the webinar, our hope is that we will answer these 3 questions for you. How is coaching teachers different from coaching coaches? How does instructional coaching impact the coach's personal growth? And how do lessons learned lead to greater coaching impact? So what I'm going to do right now is provide, Patty, can you mute yourself, please?
Can I what?
Right now is provide an overview of our instructional coaching model here in our 2 school districts in Texas. So I'm going to just begin with what our I3 partnership looks like in Texas and how we have strategically placed our instructional coaches. So there's 2 school districts represented as part of the I3 grant here in Texas. They are PSJA, ISD. In PSJA, we have 6 schools, and we have a total of 2 FTEs as instructional coaches. In PSJA, though, they also have 1 campus instructional coach at each of their campuses. In Brownsville, we have 9 schools that we're serving, and we have 3 Educate Texas coaches assigned to the project, and then Brownsville has 3 coaches, 1 assigned to each high school cluster. So that's the way we've placed our coaches. And by the way, all of the coaches have at least 15 teachers that they serve in a coaching cohort for the year, and sometimes just for a semester if those teachers are ready to be exited from the coaching process. Adelaida is going to be sharing some scenarios with you all in a little bit, coaching scenarios, but before she goes into that, I really want to talk about what our coaching cycle looks like, because the way we coach teachers is mainly one-to-one professional development in the school. That's the crux of our coaching. And so that professional development has 3 sessions or parts, if you want to call it that. The first one is pre-planning. The second is going into the classroom and visiting after the pre-planning. And then third, the instructional coach visiting with the teacher after the classroom visit and debriefing. I'd like you to notice that the cycle is displayed in the format of a Venn diagram because there can be some overlapping in the task at each session. So now we're going to take a closer look at the task with the cycle. So pre-planning consists of the instructional coach going in and talking to the teacher about their learning expectations. What do they want the students to be able to do by the end of that lesson, to be able to know, to be able to do? And then the instructional coach would help the teacher with lesson planning, thinking about the activities in the lesson and the parts of the lesson plan, the resources, would all of those things lead to meeting those learning expectations, helping the teacher embed the common instructional framework, best practice teaching, etc. And the third part of this pre-planning would be the teacher actually establishing a goal. What do they want to get from this? What do they want to get better at? What do they want to know about their students? So, for example, if Adelaida was the instructional coach and she was coaching me, I might say to her, you know, Adelaida, I really need your help knowing how many students are actually asking questions about content. So she would try to gather that data for me, and then we would have conversations about that in the debrief. The second part of the coaching cycle is the classroom visit. So we actually have 2 types of classroom visits that are part of our instructional coaching. The first one is just the classroom visit that's associated with the pre-planning, where the coach goes in and collects notes, collects data based on that pre-planning, based on the learning expectations, based on the goal that the teacher set. The second type of classroom visit is when we collect trend data in the school of all the teachers that we coach so that we can determine the evidence of CIS and also the quality of implementation. The third part of our coaching cycle is the debrief. So really, this debrief is a one-on-one professional development session because the coach sits down with the teacher and, you know, really provides some great training, job-embedded training right there on the spot. So the coach then, so Adelaida would share those notes with me if I were her teacher, and I would reflect on that student data along with her help, and we would talk about if the data reflected that the students met their learning expectations, and we would talk about the goal that I had set for that day, and then we would discuss next steps. So I really thought it was important just for all of you to have an understanding of what our coaching cycle looked like before Adelaida moves into the coaching scenarios. And so if any of you have a question before we move on, if you could let us know and Caesar can unmute you, I'll wait a second to see if any of you have a question. Okay, it doesn't look like it, so I am going to turn it over to Adelaida now, and she'll move on to the second part of our session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today, and I especially appreciate your willingness to share your time with us. I want to start by saying to Caesar, I do not forgive you for butchering my name until you come back down and buy us lunch. And I want to also just emphasize that you're going to see throughout the session a lot of documents that we use as we progress and grow with our teachers. And I wanted to just emphasize that Catherine has introduced our project. It's the Early College Expansion Partnership. And a lot of what you're going to see is truly partnership between a lot of the ladies that are present in today's session. So I just wanted to say thank you and to really highlight the fact that none of what you're going to see is one sole person's contribution to our work. It's a lot of minds coming together. So thank you, ladies. So with that having been said, I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of things. First, if you recall, Catherine shared with us a couple of questions that we're hoping to answer throughout the session. So the first question was, how is coaching a teacher different from coaching a coach? So the first scenario that you have before you is Mr. Cano. Mr. Cano is a first-year history teacher. He loved history as a history buff and came into education. He has quickly realized that his students are not as excited about history as he would like for them to be. He finds that he is delivering lectures and finding that he's spending a lot more time than he would like to redirecting his students. So he shares this concern with his instructional coach even before we begin our process together. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice an action plan. And the action plan starts with always establishing a goal. We already know what his concern is. We lesson plan with Mr. Cano. We go into the classroom. We collect the data. We reflect on that data. We debrief, and we talk about what can we change, what can we continue to do, what else do we want to try. So everything here is reflective of what Catherine was talking about when she spoke about the three-step process of the coaching cycle.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we always practice what we preach. So one of the, the Common Instructional Framework is really the meat of what we are coaching teachers on in this project. And so we're going to have you all do a little activity. This is a double entry journal, and it's writing to learn. And so Adelaida just went through what an action plan with a teacher would look like. And what we'd like to know is, what are your reactions to that action plan? So for example, this moves me because, I wonder if, I wonder why, maybe because. So if you'll take a couple moments to write down your reactions to the action plan, and then we'll ask if anybody would like to share. If you're in the room with somebody else, you could even do a little bit of classroom talk about this if you want to. Okay, so if there's anybody that would like to share your reaction, we sure would like a couple of people to share. If you could let Caesar know by chatting in the chat box, and then he can give you control of your mic. Okay, well, that's fine. I'm just hoping that you were able to think about this action plan and how we use it to guide the coaching that we do with the teachers that we're assigned to.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so as you noticed, the pink screen that we shared with you, the action plan that we wanted you to think about, is what the coach jots down prior to. This is the steps that I'm hoping to follow with this teacher. But what you have before you is an individual coaching plan. So, and this is a plan generated alongside the teacher that we are coaching. So because Mr. Cano has already expressed concern with his students being disengaged, him having to redirect, then those are very specific, measurable things that we can work towards. So this individual coaching plan has a couple of components that I just want to go over very briefly. So the first thing that you'll notice is that we give an opportunity for our teachers to select their area of focus, and everything from bell to bell is covered, from delivery to the prior planning to looking at student work and results afterwards. We set goals with the teacher. How do you know that you are moving forward in this area? We also talk about what kinds of supports am I going to be bringing to the table in order to help you better reach your students. We also talk very specifically about what kind of data am I going to be collecting when I go into your classroom. And as always, we have the common instructional framework focus that guides us. You'll notice at the bottom of the document, this is our progress monitoring section. This is a live document. Every time that we engage with a teacher, we come back and we continue to add to this coaching plan, because we have this segment where we talk about how is it going, what have we already done, what improvements have we seen, what else do we want to continue to work on. And so this is the individual coaching plan, one of the documents that we use with our teachers. Another document that I wanted to share with you is the classroom visit notes. So Catherine shared with us the coaching cycle, and we talked about the pre-planning component, and then we talked about the classroom visit. This is a sample of what might be collected in Mr. Cano's classroom. So Mr. Cano is concerned with the fact that his students are disengaged. He's concerned with the fact that he has to redirect frequently. So when we collect data in this format for him, it allows us to do several things. Number one, you'll notice on the upper left-hand corner a seating chart. That allows us to tabulate for Mr. Cano who's responding to his questions, who's reacting to his instructions, and that kind of information. We clearly want to be able to show Mr. Cano that there is or is not a clear connection between what he has as his posted objective and what the students and he are engaging in during class time. And we have our I wonder statements. We're always moving towards what else can we continue to look at. CIF, as always, we look at whether or not we see evidence of CIF strategies in the delivery of instruction and in student input and output. But I want to draw your attention to what looks like a script from what's happening in class. Mr. Cano is concerned with disengagement, and here we're clearly able to see that he spent 6 minutes trying to figure out a video that just wasn't working. What does that translate to in student reactions? We see that students begin to fiddle with this thing and that. They're just sitting around waiting. They put their heads down. They search through backpacks. And then again, at 11:48, he asks students to just get up and get rulers. We have 13 kids just randomly searching the room for rulers. So again, those are little procedural facts that we share with Mr. Cano so that he can begin to see a clearer picture that what he's lacking in the classroom are structures, procedures, routines, and then we create new goals around that. So this is a sample of classroom visit notes that we would use with any teacher, not just Mr. Cano. Before we move on to the next scenario, ladies and gentlemen, if at any point you have a question about what you see us presenting, particularly documents that you have questions about, please feel free to notify Caesar, and we will address it as we move forward. So here we have a second teacher. This is Ms. Gomez. Ms. Gomez has more teaching experience than Mr. Cano does. She has done well in state assessments in the past, and she is beginning to become a little alarmed because as state assessment criteria and standards shift, she's been able to notice that her English language learners are lagging behind. They're not quite able to catch up to her other students. So she shares this concern with her coach. You'll notice again that we have an immediate action plan that is directly connected to our coaching cycle. Along with the documents that we've already shared with you, the classroom visit notes and the individualized coaching plan, we have data tables. So we've been able to see through the document that we were looking at, the teacher visit notes, that a lot of very general data can be gathered in a short amount of time. But because this teacher in particular already has a particular concern, she's talking about her English language learners. We know as educators that English language learners need plenty of opportunities to listen, speak, read, and write about content on a daily basis. So a data table comes in the picture and allows us to collect very specific data for Mrs. Gomez. So in this particular instance, I have this document to draw from that says, you allowed your students to listen. Look at the data. 23 out of 23 kids were listening to you while you were doing the mini lesson component. How about student to student? Did we gather any evidence that says students were given an opportunity to listen to each other? And we see that we have none. And then we have speaking opportunities. She generated 5 questions during mini lesson components, and 7 students responded to that. And then speaking opportunities. This would be evidence of classroom talk, student-to-student dialogue. Again, we have no evidence of that. So then this is clear data that we can share with Mrs. Gomez to demonstrate that in order for her to move her English language learners forward, her lesson has to be geared towards ensuring that classroom talk, writing to learn, collaborative group work, all of that, everything that is represented through the Common Instructional Framework is present in the lesson. Okay, so back to some more engagement from our audience. This time we're going to do some questioning. You're going to create a question. So you've just seen the individual coaching plan, the teacher visit note, and the data table. So what questions do these tools raise for you? We would like each of you to jot down at least one question. We are going to have a question and answer segment at the end, and we'd really like to be able to answer your questions during that time. So we'll give you a minute to jot down a question. Okay, well, hopefully that was enough time for you to jot down a question, and we'll look forward to hearing your questions at the end of the session. So you'll recall, ladies and gentlemen, that one of our questions was, how is coaching a teacher different from coaching a coach? So this is a coach scenario. Ms. Carlisle was an extraordinary teacher for many years. She's now a coach. She knows that part of her role is to deliver professional development for her teachers. She worked diligently at providing professional development on classroom talk to the entire campus, but then is disappointed to realize that as she walks through campus, she doesn't really see the teachers utilizing the strategies that she presented. So Ms. Carlisle shares this with her external coach. And so you'll notice that, again, we have in the pink section of the screen an action plan. You'll notice that it begins with placing teachers on a skill wheel matrix, and then everything that follows that is, again, what we've become familiar with in terms of the coaching cycle. But I want to take us into looking a little more deeply into the skill wheel matrix and how that guides differentiation for coaches. Just the way that we expect teachers to differentiate for students, coaches have to differentiate for teachers as well. So the first task is to place any and all teachers that you're working with as a coach on a skill-will matrix. So let's take the teachers that we're already familiar with, for instance, Mr. Cano and Mrs. Gomez. Mr. Cano is a low-skill teacher. He's a brand new teacher, but he's high-will. He falls into that guidance category. And then we have Ms. Gomez. Ms. Gomez is high-skill and high-will. She's in the delegating category. So we further have research that guides how we should interact in our coaching process with these teachers. And that looks a little like this. This is coming from the Tower of Coaching, and it gives very specific actions to take with teachers once you've been able to identify where they fall in the skill-will matrix. So, for instance, with Mr. Cano, we would have to invest some time with him early. We have to model for him. We have to train him. Then we need to let him try it and continue to progress from there. And with Mrs. Gomez, she's over at the delegate, and she needs to feel the freedom to still be in control, but she is needing to set objectives that she's not quite sure about yet. So that becomes our responsibility. That's where data tables and everything else that we've been talking about come into the picture. Now, something else that was spoken about by Catherine earlier when we started our session is that she spoke about two different types of visits that we do in classrooms. The first one was to collect the data on the documents that we've already been sharing, and the second is to collect trends. So if Ms. Carlisle has already delivered professional development on Classroom Talk and has already modeled it for some teachers and et cetera, then it comes time to collect trend data to measure our progress and how we are as a campus. So we have two things that I want to draw your attention to here. The first is that there's very clear procedures that have been established for how to conduct these data walks, what to look for, how long to stay there. The second one is that we've been able to establish that it isn't enough to just go in and say, yes, Classroom Talk was happening, but we want to be able to say to what level is Classroom Talk happening, and that's the bottom portion of the pink side of your screen. Is that at an initiating, developing, or demonstrating? And of course, all of this is guided by our JFF CIF rubrics. And of course, we have a document attached to that process. This is the data trend walk record sheet, and you'll notice that it addresses the two big components that we spoke about earlier. Is there evidence that the Common Instructional Framework strategies are being used? And then to what degree are they being used?
So thinking about what Adelaida just shared, our question is, how does instructional coaching impact a coach's personal growth? So there's a quote here that I would like you all to think about, maybe thinking about it from the lens of being an instructional coach yourself, or thinking about it from playing a sport when you had a coach, thinking about it from the lens of being a teacher and maybe you were coached by an instructional coach, maybe you've had some leadership coaching, etc. So what does this quote mean to you in relation to any type of coaching? Go ahead and take a minute to think about that and write about it. So We've asked several times if anybody would like to speak, and we're going to give that opportunity again. However, maybe this will make you think of another question as well that you might want to ask during the question and answer segment that we're going to have on at the end of this session related to instructional coaching. Is there anybody that would like to comment on this quote?
So, ladies and gentlemen, as awkward as it is for us to sit here and go through this, let me tell you why we're feeling awkward. We don't know, those of us that are CIS.
Adelaide, we do have a comment from Caroline Myers. Carolyn, your mic is open. Caroline? We can't hear you. Okay. So, Catherine, can you see the questions? Because you can respond. Oh, she can't find her mic. That's okay. Catherine, can you see the questions? You want to respond to them?
I wish I could. Let me see if I can see the chat box. Yes. So from Joel Vargas, can you go back to the previous slide? Yes, we can.
Catherine, that was from a while ago. You can ignore that.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Joel. I couldn't see the chat box until now. So, but please ask us the question at the end during the question and answer session if you still have it. All right. Well, I do not see Caroline. I don't see any other questions, so we'll move on.
Caroline, thank you for attempting to provide us with some feedback. You know, those of us that are in love with the Common Instructional Framework and really aim to do everything that we engage in using the Common Instructional Framework. Catherine and I sit here on this end. We don't know how to just lecture to you. So we literally sit here and provide these opportunities. And although this system, the webinar system, isn't ideal for what we're attempting to do, I think that the big message remains the same. Every time that we engage with anybody at any professional level, teachers, coaches, peers, we are always exemplifying the Common Instructional Framework, and today is no exception. With that, I want to move us forward. So when we talk about personal growth, I think that first we need to understand what personal growth cycle looks like. So I want to share that with you right now. So this is the process of personal growth. It begins with defining goals and setting deadlines, understanding strengths, recognizing opportunities, developing new skills, taking action, supporting and getting support and measuring progress. And without saying anything else, I want you to do a little bit of reflection and a little bit of thinking alongside Catherine and I. What does this process remind you of? This is a stop and jot, and in a lecture format, then you would literally just stop and ask all of the students, all of the participants to just jot down their thoughts. What does this process remind you of? We do have a comment from Ileana. She's saying that learning is about reflection. You need to reflect on life experiences and events and grow from them. I know it's connected to our previous question, but I can certainly make sense of that and apply it to this new question. What does this process remind you of? definitely connected to reflection. And for us in the world of Common Instructional Framework and coaching, it's certainly connected to what we live every day, the coaching cycle. This is in essence the coaching cycle with different words attached to it. But isn't it a beautiful thing for us to recognize that personal growth is what our job is asking us to do every day? With that having been said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to move us on to question number 3. How have lessons learned impacted outcomes? How have they changed us? And those of you that are in the audience and have been coaches know all too well what we're about to talk and share with you in the coming screens. It has been a growing process for all of us, a true partnership and sharing. So the first lesson learned that we want to share with you is that we came very prepared to deliver factual data to our teachers, not fully realizing that they didn't really know what to do with that. It was an uncomfortable feeling to have this kind of data delivered to them when they were used to receiving walkthrough observation data from their administrators that just sounded like satisfactory. Just keep going, do more of what you're doing. So then we come in with facts and descriptions and expectations to do more. And so we quickly learned that we needed to format, create structures and processes that everybody was adhering to. And so this lesson learned resulted in the adaptations that you currently see on your screen. I know they're a little fuzzy, but the adaptations are the forms that we've been talking about. We've been talking about the classroom visit notes and the individual coaching plans. These have been very steady guides for us in interacting with every coaching encounter that we run into. Another lesson learned, ladies and gentlemen, as you saw when we were going through the forms, it was one thing to have an easy to identify situation, as in Mr. Cano's lack of structure and managerial expertise in setting up the classroom. That kind of information can easily be gathered with the classroom visit note. The data table was a result of needing a more focused collection system. So data tables are not our invention. We have just gotten into the habit of creating data tables that match our teacher needs. So for instance, what you see here is the data table that we've already shared with you for Ms. Gomez's struggling English language learner population. We have also created data tables around ratio of positive to negative interactions for behavior issues. We have also created data tables around levels of questioning for rigor issues. So everything has come as a result of identifying needs within the teacher populations that we serve. And we want to share one more lesson learned with you. So we were able to identify that in order for us to truly attempt to build sustainability across the campuses that we work on, both within BISD, Brownsville Independent School District, and the FAR San Juan Alamo Independent School District, part of our job is to help build sustainability so these things continue to happen even when we are out of the picture. That's the beautiful ideal. And in order for those things to happen, that means that we have to be very specific about identifying frameworks, structures, processes, and what you saw earlier as the data trend walk record sheet is another example of that. So we realized that in order for data walks to be effective, we needed to write instructions for them. In order for them to be consistent, we needed to create a form for them. In order for us to gauge the level of implementation, we not only wanted to look at is the common instructional framework present, but to what degree. So everything that we're trying to share with you is that truly, truly, coaching is a personal and professional growth at the optimal level. Everything that we engage in follows the cycle of coaching that leads to growth at every end. And we've been able to identify, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not sure that we were here at the beginning, but we certainly are now. In order for us to push towards those outcomes of the early college extension partnership of impacting our college-going culture, our students, it's directly connected to our inability to structures and processes that are easy to duplicate and follow. That has been the key to success where we have seen success. Where we have seen some growth and some outcomes, we can directly trace it to processes, structures, and frameworks.
Well, we have about 16 minutes that we could answer questions based on any part of this presentation, based on our coaching structure, our cycle, the tools, our trend data. So I can now see the chat box. We did have you all write down at least one question based on the tools earlier in the session. So we're going to open up for question and answer at this time.
Yeah, and your mics have been unmuted, so if you would like to even speak, you have an opportunity to do so now. I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, I'll break the ice. You know, as you were going through Adelea, and I know someone named Adelina, so it gets mixed up. But as you were going through that, what's the power of this in relationship to only a group of teachers doing it, or only one or two teachers doing it? I guess what I'm asking is that how effective is it to turn around the whole school, and what's the value of only doing a couple of teachers? Does that make sense?
So he's asking, I think he's asking.
Yeah, if you only do a couple of teachers, does it have the type of impact for all the teachers that you need to have?
So, for example, our coaching cycle is 1-to-1. So I think he's asking about, well, what if we coached larger groups of teachers, like in a PLC or in a lesson planning session, something like that? He's asking, wouldn't the impact be different? Like in this model, how are we reaching the whole school?
So, Cesar, a couple of things come into play. Number one, when we gave scenarios, they were aimed at differentiating between coaching a coach and coaching a teacher. But to answer your question, we look a little deeper into some of the processes that are happening now that were not happening in year one at the campuses that we serve. For instance, year one, we did start with coaching only teachers on a one-on-one basis. Now we have progressed to working with what is called leadership teams at the campus. We still coach teachers one-on-one, but on top of that, we're coaching team leaders and or department heads at every campus. So we're moving towards that sustainability procedurally. Does that answer the question?
That absolutely answers the question in terms of building capacity and sustaining what you're doing. Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and we have another question from Caroline. Thank you so much. what time frame do you suggest is needed to adequately record data on listening, reading, writing, and speaking? And I'm going to let Adelaida answer that question.
Hi, Caroline. Thanks for your question. I think that it really depends on what you see happening in the classroom. But as a rule of thumb, we always want to be in there, and if we already know that this is a concern for the teacher, we want to ensure that we are with the teacher and the students through the entire independent guided practice and exit component of the lesson. That's when we truly want to see those CIF strategies embedded. And so if we miss the beginning of class and we miss the mini lecture, which is what we call the mini lesson, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if we are well into guided practice, independent practice, and exit time, and those opportunities haven't been provided, then that would definitely be where I want to spend the bulk of my time in the classroom. Does that make sense?
Says yes, thank you. Thanks so much, Caroline, for participating. Any other questions? Questions about?
Well, I have a comment.
Okay.
This is Amina. I noted as a first-year external coach, I think that what I found the most impacting thing that I've done, and even though I've had to kind of work my way through it and build my relationships with people on the campuses that I'm serving, going through the coaching cycle is where I've seen the good things happening, I guess, and where I've been able to have the very, very honest conversations with teachers in terms of how they're teaching or what they're trying to accomplish in their classroom. And if not for the deliberate coaching cycle of pre-conference and then going into the classroom and then debriefing afterwards, I don't think the debriefings would be as powerful if we didn't talk about it first a little bit, and then I come in and then we have some honest talk about it, including, well, for me, including the department head of that content area that I went into, and letting them see that too. And so as together as a team and speaking to the teacher, I first thought that it would be more intimidating, but in the end, it actually was really much more beneficial because we were able to not just map out something in terms of next steps, but also just kind of be real about what we saw, what we hope to see, and what we know can be done, and you know, and build an excitement to, you know, your classroom is built this way, and it's a great vehicle to do this and this and this and this, and the teachers have been super receptive to that. So my thing is, I just really love going through the cycle. It takes more time, and I think it's probably a little intimidating for the teacher as well. But once we go through it, it's been really good, and I found it to be really awesome, even in building my relationships with the teachers.
Thank you so much, Amina. Really appreciate the feedback.
I have a question. Can anybody hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Kathy Lacey. You mentioned utilizing the skill-will matrix, and I was wondering, when you use that matrix, do you share with the teachers where they fall on that matrix? And if so, how does that work?
So utilization of the skill-will matrix is a tool that we use as coaches, and because we want to always maintain relationships with teachers, that's not necessarily something that we bring to the table and tell them you fall in this category. That's a guiding tool for us in order to guide our interactions with them, not necessarily share with them, because we don't ever want them to feel that we are evaluating them on any level. So that's definitely a tool that we use on our end.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? All right. Well, looks like I'm going to give y'all one more chance for one more question, and then we'll move on. All right. Well, thank you so much for those of you that did ask questions, and really everybody who participated today. This is really exciting to launch the first webinar for the community of practice, and I hope that it's been worthwhile, and we hope that more and more people will watch the recorded version. We do have one more thing for all of you all to think about, because as Adelaida was talking about, we just cannot end our sessions without some type of reflection, because as Ileana said, learning takes place when there's reflection. So this is an exit text ticket. It's another writing to learn strategy. It's a 3-2-1. So for you all to think about and or write about 3 things this session made you think of in terms of your own practice, 2 next steps you may want to consider, and 1 person whose support you might want to enlist. So on that note, I'm just going to say thank you again, and I did send this slide deck to Caesar, so it will be posted on the community of practice as well. And all of the tools that we presented today on this webinar have been uploaded as resources into the community of practice for any of you all to use, share, etc. Okay, well, do you want to say anything, Adelaida?
I just want to thank everybody for your time again. I know it's Friday afternoon, and all of us have a lot of places that we can be, and that you've chosen to be here with us is important to us. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and if in the event that after we're done, you have any questions about any of the documents, the processes, any questions in coaching in general, feel free to contact us. We're truly aiming at being a partnership, and we're excited to be part of the JFF community of practice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Adelaida and Catherine. Of course, you guys did a fabulous job. I'm really clapping, so you can't hear me, but you guys did a great job. And again, thank everyone for participating. Everyone have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.